Western civilization is moving closer to a point of irreconcilable, unstable equilibrium, as frighteningly increasing numbers of people trust nothing. Media, academia, and especially the governments are no longer held in high esteem. Regaining trust is often impossible after betrayal. However, transparency is essential to any healing process, and that is the essence of the Don Sullivan Show. Please listen to the team explore, probe, and debate cutting-edge science, technology, and computing. Play ball! Welcome back, everyone, to the Don Sullivan Show. Again, the show where we discuss everything, all things science, technology, and computing on a level that can be understood by your average American teenager. And we want them all to understand everything that we go through on the broad and incredibly disparate variety of subjects that we cover on the Don Sullivan Show. But first, again, at the insistence of our vast legal team, I have to read out the disclaimer because, this is what they want. So, all statements by the host and the guests of the Don Sullivan Show are the personal opinions of the host and the guests, who all agree that the following content is the property of Zanalytics LLC to be used publicly and exclusively on the Don Sullivan Show. And I see everybody, although the audience only listening, I can see everybody's head nodding in agreement, so we are good to go. And today, we have a very interesting and special event. I am not doing this from my home in Colorado. I am hosting from beautiful and crazy and immense Las Vegas, the home of incredibly huge resorts and casinos. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about something a concept that's really big, but not big buildings. We're going to talk about big ships, and particularly and specifically big cruise ships. And to that effort, we have Pat the Admiral from Cruise Vacations. Pat, want to say hello and introduce yourself. And Pat, I'm never sure how to pronounce your last name, so help me out with that.
Last name is it's pronounced Theberge, Theberge. In French, it's Theberge.
Theberge, that's even better. Yeah.
I'm a Canadian hockey puck
Canadian
ancestry.
Hockey puck. But you're a Bruins fan. You're up in Boston.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, we can tolerate that. Us New Jersey people can tolerate Boston people when we want to have discussions on the Don Sullivan Show. When it comes to sports, well, we sit on the other side of the arena. But Pat has been arranging various different vacations and cruises for me for many decades and lots of my friends. And Pat is the most knowledgeable person there is. And remember, the Don Sullivan Show has a number of different sub-series. You're going to see sub-series episodes on watches and AI and all kinds of other things. But this is the one that we started a couple of months ago on big ships, and specifically cruise ships. Pat and his daughter, Erica, with Cruise Vacations, have set up that particular expedition I went on. And Stephen and I both are going to be going on one again next year up to Alaska. So with that note, Steve, time to introduce yourself.
Greetings from the Garden State. It's good to be on today. So, folks, today's episode is brought to you by License Fortress, the industry's first and only software asset management firm to offer both a financial and legal guarantee at its highest level of service. Whether it's Oracle, Microsoft, or VMware, License Fortress helps organizations stay compliant, avoid audits, and save money. You can learn more at licensefortress.com. And please support our producer by visiting axedinc.com, AXTINK.com. Subscribe to his YouTube channel and help support his efforts to create humorous animation and survive that magical school he's been attending after being kidnapped by the giant. Back to you, Don.
Do we have to have an episode on that school, Stephen? That was just a very weird story. Do we have to have an episode on that?
We could inquire.
Yeah, well, we'll think about that later. But for now, hey, Pat, you got to explain to us. You're an Air Force guy. You're an Air Force guy. I know you spent a lot of time in Guam. How did you become the Admiral?
Well, it's a long story. I started to tell Steve before you got on that I got out of the Air Force in 1973. My background's electrical engineering. I worked on airborne inertial and LORAN systems aboard C-141 aircraft, the cargo jets. I was attached to the Military Airlift Commander, MAC. Anyway, when I got out, I went to work for an electronics firm here in Boston along 128, because that used to be like what you guys have out in California. It was all electronics, and it was a big time industry here back in the mid 70s and what have you. Anyway, I went to work for them as an electronics firm. The name was called Dytron. And I stumbled onto a situation where a woman had a travel agency. Her husband had died. She was looking to sell it. So I investigated. I kind of looked at it, and I always liked travel. So I said, you know what? The price was good. She wanted to retire and move to Florida and collect a paycheck. So I said, I'm interested in this. And back then they were doing everything, handwriting tickets, doing everything over the phone.
Selling plane tickets too, right?
Yeah, no, and it was basically a corporate travel agency. We did travel for Tufts University, the medical school, the dental school. We did Alice Chalmer, Kiss 108 Radio, which is a big radio station here in Boston. We did Extra Incorporated, the guys that have at least the trailer trucks. So we had quite a few corporate accounts. We were basically corporate. We did some leisure, but it wasn't that big a deal. And I was telling Steve, I bought the agency, and the thing is, because they were doing it by hand and my background, I knew that I could put computers in and automate this place and increase the business and become more efficient, save money, and make more money, so on and so forth. So I worked a deal with TWA at the time, who had a
members of the Don Sullivan Show younger audience that used to be an airline, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say they've gone
original Howard Hughes airline. We'll talk about him later too.
Yeah. Well, they had a computer system called PARS, PARS, Passenger Airline Reservation System, and I worked a deal with them where they put it to my office, trained my people, and then they could bring people in on the weekends or by appointment, other agencies and stuff, to come in and show them how the system worked up front, how we used it, how they could save money. So I sold a lot of passenger airline reservation systems for them back in that day. And what leisure we did, we sold a little bit of cruising, but not much. But one thing happened in 1979. Again, this is ancient history stuff. I don't know if you want to hear all this, but there was something that happened called airline deregulation.
Oh, Jimmy Carter. I think one of the better things he did, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, we'll talk about that. But back then, airlines competed on service and routes. In other words, they bid for routes, and the government would control fares. And you basically had three fares. You had a coach, excursion fare, and first class fare. And the only thing you had to do to get the excursion fare is stay over a Saturday night in most cases, wherever you were going.
Anyway, I didn't know that. That's very interesting history there. I did not know about that excursion fare requirement. Yeah, go ahead.
And then, but they competed on service. That's when you traveled and you went in a suit and a tie, and everybody took care of you.
And the fine china and the silverware, it was kind of fancy.
It wasn't the cattle call that you have now. Well, after airline deregulation, now the airlines started competing on prices, and the government went out of the business of regulating airfares. And so it made it more competitive, more airlines, more flights, so on and so forth, and it got better for the consumer in the fact that they didn't pay as much for their flights. But as far as an agent went, I could see the handwriting on the wall, because we made money on a commission. In other words, we were paid maybe 5 or 10% on an airline ticket, depending on the type of airline ticket, where people were going, what have you. That's how we were compensated. So by selling airline tickets, hotel reservations, or car reservations, resort reservations, that type of stuff, that's how you made your money when you're a travel agent. So with airline deregulation, I could see that this was not going to be a good situation. And in fact, if you remember, after that period of time, a lot of travel agencies went by the board.
Yeah.
They just went out of business. But I saw the handwriting on the wall, and I was privy to. I had gone on my honeymoon on a cruise, and I loved it. I mean, back
A real
then,
love
some of
boat
these
like of
Italian.
experience there, huh?
Yeah, well, the cruise ships. I mean, I remember paying 50 cents for a double scotch in the bars and stuff. There was it was really a great experience. I mean, caviar. I mean, the whole 9 yards. It was a lot different than it is now. But I was privy to the fact that these cruise lines were going to start building more ships, and they were getting really, really popular with the consumer because you bought a cruise, you bought the air transportation, the transportation from the airport to the ship, your room, your meals, your entertainment, and the ship took you everywhere you wanted to go. And in fact, we started working deals with the cruise lines by specializing in cruises. That's when I went to the company that I bought was called Travel Unlimited Incorporated, and I formed another company called Cruise Vacations
There you go.
Incorporated.
Here we are.
And that's why we started specializing in one area of travel. It's supposed to be a travel agent where you tried to be all things to all people and know everything about every destination in the world, what have you. My idea was to start zeroing in and specializing on one area of travel that wasn't that popular at the time, but I could see the handwriting on the wall. And in fact, I had a lot of buddies in the business here in Boston that said, you'll be out of business within a couple of years. You can't make money just selling cruises. I said, well, I'm going to transition. I'm going to, as I build my cruise business, I'm going to start backing away from the corporate travel business, and we'll phase out of it over time, and we'll see how we do. And I always had the electronics to back up on, or go back to work for an electronics firm or something. I had a couple offers from Hewlett Packard, so on and so forth. But anyway, that's the story of the beginning of Travel Unlimited. So I got heavily involved in marketing because it was again a new concept, what have you. I had the cruise lines backing me up because there were only a few. I would say a couple of handfuls of people around the country that were doing what I was doing. And the cruise lines zeroed in on us because we were specializing. And they would back us up with co-op advertising, and it made our job a little easier. So one of the deals was, here's how I got the name Admiral. Somebody called me one day and said, "Hey, Admiral." And he says, "Are you the Admiral of the fleet?" And I says, "Well, I guess I am. We've become experts on this product." So that's how I got the name Admiral Pat.
And so Erica is what is her rank now? She's a captain, or is she lieutenant, or
she's a captain.
She's a captain. Okay, so she could get promoted eventually when you decide to make that happen. So you're
she's taking it over. I basically backed away from it.
Yeah,
I'm doing her consulting now.
I'm Admiral Emeritus, we'll call you.
Yeah.
So you're an incredibly wise person in general, but when it comes to this industry, you have by far the most experience of anybody I know, probably most experience of anybody. So I from a scientific perspective, let's speak about the logistics for a little bit. Let's give the audience an overview on how these ships work. And I kind of talked about it in the last Big Ships episode, but that was just me on the ship. So the captain is obviously God. This is still, for the most part, works by merchant marine law, I believe. There is a certain chain of authority. A couple of things that I find interesting, though. When you look at the ranks of the individuals, you see the food service or the hotel, top directors or whatever, they have very high ranks. But I can't imagine they're the ones who take over the ship if there is, some kind of problem at sea. Are they really second and third command? And am I right about that notion that they follow the merchant marine system?
They do and they don't. There's a bigger differentiation between the operation of the ship, which is the captain, the staff captain, navigation, engineering, all that stuff. That's one area of the thing. So somebody from the hotel department, the head of the hotel department, is not going to run the ship if
But
there's a
they have a
problem with the
rank
captain.
that's right below the captain,
Yeah,
clearly, right? So,
they do. They do, but they don't have the responsibility of the ship. They will consult with the captain on problems that they may have in the hotel area, or maybe the dining area where there's problems in the kitchen with I don't know, fire extinguishers and this and that, one thing or another. So there is a cooperation between the uh, physical operation of the ship and the hotel staff. But hotel staff is basically providing services for the passengers and the guests uh, pretty exclusively.
okay, so let's talk about the ships themselves, and the for anybody in the audience that hasn't actually experienced it, I made a quip at the beginning about them being the size of some of these Las Vegas hotels or Manhattan skyscrapers, and that's not an exaggeration. They're 1,200 feet high. Empire, the Freedom Tower is 1,700 foot high. So these are 1,200 feet long. The Royal Caribbean ships, in particular, they have, I believe, 9 of the 10 biggest ships in the world, including the new Star of the Seas, the sister ship of the Icon. Um, and
Yeah.
as part of the Icon class in the 2022 Symphony of the Seas and Oasis, they were the biggest at the time. They were 1,200 feet. That's and 20 stories high as they're floating. These are absolutely immense. That's 4 football fields, American football fields long. They can carry, and they do carry, 10,000 souls, including passengers and crew. How big can these damn things get? I mean, obviously, they had to rebuild new locks in the Panama Canal to let them and the large American aircraft carriers get through. But how big can they get, Pat?
They can get bigger. It becomes more logistics than anything else. The amazing thing, and what a lot of people don't see, I have a lot of customers and what have you that come back and say, "How do they do this? How do they do that? How do you know?" It is really well. If you do the background or the logistics behind all these systems that operate on the ship to take care of passengers, it's all done in the background, so you have your chance to relax, use the pool, take advantage of the entertainment, what have you. But it's really a hotel operation, big hotel operation.
But they can, I mean, physically, they can make them bigger because, I mean, just the materials and the strength that goes into
Well,
holding them
it gets
together.
yeah no. The problem is with the port facilities and what have. They can make them probably bigger. If you know, I know you've been to Florida a couple of times, but and when you take these new ships, they built port facilities just for them, dock facilities just for them, to be able to bring in all the uh, 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 supplies and all the other stuff for the ships. And now what happens in these ports and stuff, they used to run their engines all the time when they're in port. They don't anymore. They plug into the shoreside now, so they don't run their engine. That cuts down on emissions and what have you quite a bit. There's stuff like that goes on. So the limitations on the size of the ship, uh, I'm going to say, is more shoreside than it is
Wow.
putting
And they can
a
go,
boat on the ocean.
and they can go at 25 knots, I think is a max. It's like 25, that's about 28 miles an hour for people who need to know what knots means. It's a nautical
Yeah,
mile an hour.
depending. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, that's dependent on sea conditions and what have you. And uh, a lot of these ships now are built with like little wings on the side of the ship to prevent them from rolling and rocking. Uh, there's a lot of matter of fact. There's one interesting thing now they're working on. I'm privy to or something learned about, and we've talked to a few people about. They have a new system now, or they're going to have a system where they will force bubbles out the bottom of the ship along the hull, little like a I don't want to call it like tonic water. You know how tonic water's got
Yeah, so
bubbles
it's
and
it's
what
almost
have you.
carbonation in that sense. It's a
Well, yeah, that's what I'm talking. Yeah, carbonation that will run along the hull of the ship, and what that'll do is make it faster but more efficient cutting through the water.
Really?
Less resistance in the water, and they're talking. It's all about saving fuel, and so they figure they can save about 8 to 9% fuel by using this system that forces these bubbles out along the bottom of the hull to make it more thing. I mean,
they're
you
almost
talk about
creating a
futuristic.
water channel in its really aerodynamic
Fascinating.
engineering. It's a water
Yeah,
channel. That's
yeah,
absolutely
yeah. It's
that is
not my
amazing.
experience, but
It kind
yeah.
of makes
So
sense if you think about it,
Sure, it
because
does.
don't they have those little bubblers near
yeah,
Olympic divers to cut down on make it go through make them go through the water easier? I think that's more about safety, but yeah, that kind of makes
see,
sense.
I feel fortunate in the fact that I basically grew up helping the cruise lines build this business back in the early 80s and what have you. That my first cruise was on a 30,000-ton ship called the Oceanic out of New York to Nassau and Bermuda. Uh, uh, it had 500 passengers on it. Now you're talking 6,000-7,000 passengers plus crew.
Yeah, 10,000
You know,
10,000 souls is like yeah.
yeah, 8, 9, 10,000 people on the ship. So it's amazing how they're doing this. Um, the way the ship's built now, these the cabins on the ship are basically prefab cabins. And when they build a ship and they plug these cabins in like um, Lego blocks. Okay. Um, that's how they can build them pretty efficiently and effectively, and
How long
they're
does it
pretty
take
nice. I mean,
from order to about 5 years from order to
yeah,
completion?
it'll take 5 or 6 years depending on the technology on the ship and what have
Yeah.
you. I mean, these big ships like the Icon and stuff, those are $1 billion ships. I mean,
Yeah,
and
two, I
they'll make
think.
their money
Two at
on it.
this point, and
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
built all out of Scandinavia somewhere, right? In Norway, I think, or
Oh, really?
yeah.
I was going to ask, where do you
No,
build something
well,
that big?
they build them in Saint Nazaire, France. There's a couple places in Germany. There's a
Oh,
place
okay.
in yeah.
I know Trump wants to
Uh,
bring shipbuilding back to the United States if he can, because 100 years ago there was an immense shipbuilding. We'll see if that ever happens, but they're built in
yeah,
France and Germany mostly now, or they're not Norway, huh?
yeah.
Hmm.
No,
Okay.
no.
All right. So let's talk about the fuel.
Uh,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
well, propulsion systems on the ships, they run this used to run the heavy crude oil and stuff. They've improved on those. They make them more efficient. They don't run them as much as they
Well,
use
that's what
the
I wanted to talk
waste
to you
on.
about. It's not bunker fuel anymore. I think that was the term.
No, no. Matter of fact, there's a few of them now looking at doing electronic batteries and solar. They'll charge them when the ship is in port, and then trickle charge them using solar and wind on the ships. I mean, there's some stuff out here in the future that I've heard them talk about, and most of the stuff these big ships, they were talking about these 15, 20 years ago. They were just waiting for technology to catch up to be
Well,
able
yeah,
to
the
put that.
battery capacity is still the issue, and the
Yeah,
amount of
yeah.
time the batteries can only still be charged 700 times before they need to be
Right,
replaced,
but
and so on. So
we're not talking Icon of the Sea on these ships. The smaller
yeah,
ships.
sure.
You have the big mass market ships, the for the largest segment of the population that are looking for a 1 week vacation. And everything's included. The entertainment, the kids stuff, the bars, the casinos. It's like it's in Las Vegas. So you could, and uh, um, uh, then you deal down to a little smaller ship,
Like the
a little
ones they
bit more
use in the
luxury, a little
Galapagos,
bit
the
more.
really, really high end
Yeah,
ones. They're in the Galapagos.
uh, yeah.
Like
Well, those are
river cruises,
Yeah, yeah,
stuff
those
like
those.
too.
Well,
that.
that's where I'm going. That you go into the specialty lines, and then the high luxury lines where you have maybe 1,000 passengers, and you've got a 40 or 50,000 ton ship, but it's all it's less people on the ship, more
So
service
that's where they
orientated.
can then use the new technologies more efficiently until, of course,
Yeah.
everything is going to change once Elon Musk figures out how new materials, which are this is in my articles as well as in other Don Sullivan shows, the new materials that eventually will be discovered, hopefully, for batteries to have a greater capacity and greater lifetime. Once that happens, then you will be able to
Well,
do that. Yeah.
I even heard Elon Musk has taken some lessons from the cruise lines when
Really?
he's building his Starship. Well, to figure out when they talk about the Starship that's going to Mars or what have you.
Yeah.
All right, and that's the same kind of concept. Instead of a ship, it's a spaceship. So how do you do entertainment on those? How do you use the space on those? And that's where the cruise lines have been very, very efficient in learning their way around these things. They do a lot of studying before they put these ships together. And over the years, they've learned a lot of lessons from one generation of ship to the next. How to be more efficient, how to make things more cost effective.
All right. So let me ask you
AI. They're using AI now in the dining rooms. I mean, they can figure out at a particular day in the week, at a particular meal, how many meals they're going to need for a particular crowd based on their ages, based on where they're coming from. I mean, they figured all this stuff out. So when they order food for the ship, they don't run out of stuff, but they don't overspend on stuff either, because they've learned who's going to be on the ship, what time of year on the ship. There's a lot of things that come into play.
Well, just in math alone, Pat, 10,000 people on a ship for a week, it's going to be 200,000 meals. I mean, those numbers are just mind-boggling. So if they can do it that way, which, of course, that's one of the things that machine learning, what we call AI, as we've talked many times on the Don Sullivan show about, is particularly good at iteration of lots and lots of data, statistically speaking. So that totally makes sense. So but I do have to stay back on the fuel. Is there any possibility of, as the carriers, as the submarines, nuclear cruise ships?
There has been talk about that. You have nuclear power on aircraft carriers and submarines, and you've had that for over 50 years.
Yep.
And if you can make, this is one thing I've always thought of too. Matter of fact, they're starting to come out now. SMR, small nuclear reactors.
Yeah.
To power the AI
100
data
100 megawatt reactors that are the size of 18 wheelers, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So the point is, you can put that on a cruise ship, okay? And if you can get it safe enough and everything, which you should, that's a very, very much a possibility, But again, you got
the politics of that is immense, but still,
the politics and customer
acceptance,
being acceptance about it, what have you. There has been talk about it, but
I've always thought, it would work, though, wouldn't it? It would work.
Yeah, it works on a submarine where you got how many guys on a nuclear submarine?
A couple of hundred.
Okay, so you just expand it accordingly. I mean,
well, in a carrier, of course, there's 10,000, but that's a whole different ballgame. But it's the same point. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely a possibility. So I'll never see it, but
I don't know. I don't know if you won't. I mean, that's why I brought it up. The technology is absolutely there, and if the general public would get to a point of accepting it, obviously it's a whole different story if you get to nuclear fusion. But even with existing technologies, fission technologies, the public should be aware of every major carrier out there is nuclear that the U.S. has, and of course the subs as well. It just simply works. If it's obviously, it can't be done like Fukushima, or it can't be built in terms of the safety like Fukushima or Chernobyl. But that is really not a problem with actual existing technologies, which we will have another Don Sullivan show about. But let's digress here for a moment and talk about things that. Go ahead, Pat. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to bring up. I had made a couple of notes before I sat down to talk to you, but navigation on the ship. If you've ever, do you ever get a chance to go on the bridge on the ship?
Which I have. It's amazing. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm talking. It's a command center. Okay, it's basically an electronic command center, and now you've got all the latest navigation stuff. I kid people all the time. I used to work on navigation systems before GPS. Okay, which forerunner to GPS
You're looking
was
at the
LORAN.
stars and all. You're looking at the stars and using sextants.
Yeah, or LORAN or the inertial navigation systems. But it's changed immensely in the 10 or 15,
The
20
LORAN
years
is
since I got
the old
there.
laser-based radar.
No, it's long range air navigation.
Oh, okay. You got that from the Air Force.
And it worked on triangulation. You had 3 transmitters, and you would get the signal from the 3 transmitters and coordinate between those 3 transmitters to your location. And that information would feed into the inertial navigation system and go along with your heading and
that's
your
what the
airspeed and land speed.
The early cruise ships used all that, huh? Really?
Yeah. They use LORAN. But now they're incorporating now Starlink.
Yes, they are. It's amazing.
Internet access around the world, and it's pretty fast.
Pat, I will tell you, your company has put me literally in every ocean in the world in the last 2 years. From Antarctica to the Arctic Circle to the Pacific to obviously everywhere in the Atlantic and Starlink.
You've done river cruises. You've done river cruises too.
Starlink everywhere. The Wi-Fi calling, the signal is unbelievably good everywhere. So it's just amazing.
Yeah. So. And it's going to get better. It's going to get better.
And Elon Musk, if you're listening to this, you can be a sponsor of the Don Sullivan Show anytime you want, as can you with Cruise Vacation Star. Not that I'm selling, but you can.
Yeah, I get it. You got to make a buck, right?
Well, I want everybody to see it. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. But Elon is coming out a new generation of satellite now, where it's going to work with your cell phones and stuff. So. That's going to be.
They've got to be able to share them. Obviously, you have a particular Starlink router for an uplink, and you've got to be able to share them. And when you can share them, he's going to take over the whole cell phone industry too, I think.
Yeah. So now they're using systems on the ships too now. You've been on cruises where they want you to take your picture with your phone and send it in to them.
Mm-hmm.
They do facial recognition when you board the ship.
Yeah, Princess is doing that. Princess did that in Alaska last summer.
Yeah, and that speeds up on boarding the ship by 50%.
So they didn't have us with cards, Pat. They had us with a little medallion.
That was my next medallion tracking of the guests.
They know everywhere you are at any point in time. Yes.
They know where you are on the ship. You order a drink, and they can bring it to you wherever you are on the ship.
We noticed that our rooms opened up like when we were, or the lock opened up like when we were 5 to 10 feet from the door, rather than actually swiping the card. I'm not sure I like that, but I found it fascinating.
Yeah, well, they've got it secured pretty well. So, that's what there's a lot of technology that has been incorporated in ships as they've evolved from generation to generation, and there's more to come.
I can't wait. That's why we have to have you come back on every quarter or so to update on all this. If we haven't turned you off on the show, on the Don Sullivan Show too much, we want you to come back on and update us on all of this in our big ship series. But let me ask you this. Let's talk about some of the scary things that the general public gets scared of. It's a lot of times exaggerated significantly, such as norovirus problems or weather issues, things like rogue waves and such. What are the most dangerous things? I think the most dangerous thing is people getting too drunk and taking pictures standing up on the balconies. But you tell me, what are the most dangerous things that really can happen, truly, as opposed to the media hype?
Slipping on a wet deck.
Yeah.
That's about,
when you're drunk
they,
most of the
they
time.
hit,
Right?
yeah.
Pretty basic
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
compared to,
Yeah.
there was that documentary I think Netflix put out
The
on
Carnival Triumph problem. Yeah.
the poop,
ship.
they
Yeah.
called it the poop cruise
Yeah.
or something like that.
Well, it's
I don't
like
think that's
anything.
very common.
No, it's like anything else. These are very, very, very rare instances. I mean, actually, that first cruise I told you I took on my wedding, coming back from Nassau went from New York to Bermuda to Nassau, and Nassau back to New York, and that was my first cruise on an ocean liner on the Oceanic, and we hit a tail end of a hurricane. We followed a hurricane up the East Coast when we left Nassau, and the weather was fine through the entire trip, except when we hit Cape Hatteras, we hit 50-foot seas. Okay, in a 30,000-ton ship.
What year was this?
And if you've ever 70,
so 50 years ago. 50 years ago, this happened.
Yeah. And if you ever seen those old movies about Victory at Sea, where the bow of the ship comes down and the wave breaks over the bridge, that's what it was like.
But the ship was still fine. The ship was still fine.
Yeah. Oh, the captain was excellent. And I went to the back of the boat and played poker and drank scotch all afternoon. I mean, we had to hold on to the glasses in the bar, but my wife spent the whole day in bed because she couldn't handle it.
So even like when the media goes crazy, when a bunch of people get sick, it's 100 out of 5,000 people on a ship that get a norovirus of some kind.
Yeah,
and that's it. It's not. And
yeah,
even
and they take precautions now. They've learned how to deal with that. They'll isolate you to your cabin, and most people will get reimbursed because something, that kind of thing happened to them. So
even with the Diamond Princess in 2020 with COVID, a few people died, of course, and mostly from their own comorbidities and so on. But still, there weren't that many people, and of course, it was just exaggerated 1,000 times for that poor ship.
Yeah, the media will grab onto this because of the sensational aspects of it, but it doesn't happen as much as you think it does.
What's the scare other than what you just described? Is that the scariest moment? Do you have anything else that's even more scary that you have experienced or somebody you know has experienced on a ship?
No.
Because that one you just described sounds pretty scary.
We had a client who become a hero on the ship.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They were out on their balcony one night, and they could hear somebody yelling for help. And I guess it was later at night. They were having a nightcap or something on the balcony and what have you. And they could hear yelling. And this is out there. Lights are off on the ship. Everybody's gone to bed. And apparently the bridge wasn't aware of this, but they called the bridge. There was a sailboat turned upside down that they were going by. They must have been, I think he said 700 or 800 yards away from it. The ship was going by, and it was pitch dark at night. There wasn't a moonlit night or anything. And he let the bridge know. The bridge started turning on their searchlights. They found the people, and they rescued 4 or 5 people on that sailboat. It was a big sailboat, but it had capsized, and they rescued that crew.
Oh, that's great. You were on that ship?
So no. One of my clients told me the story. Yeah. I'd have to dig through my records, but he sent me a big letter telling me the whole story.
I think I told you I was on a ship about 20 years ago. I'm sure you might remember this, that they came up to a fishing boat off the coast of Honduras that had 5 times too many people on it, and they were out of gas. And they had to take hours, they didn't board anybody, but they gave them gas and food and water and so on. And that ship looked seriously lost, and it kind of was scary because every time that little ship which again had people hanging all over it, got drifted closer to the cruise ship. The jets on the outside could blow it away just to make sure that it didn't get too close and get dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was.
I was. Let me. I was just going through my notes while you were talking there. The fueling the ships, what have you, running ships on nuclear, what have you.
Yeah.
They're going to do LNG pretty soon, and
Liquid
I
natural
think
gas.
yeah, and Viking is talking about doing hydrogen-powered ships using fuel cells.
They are.
So
who is talking about that? I didn't know that technology. Viking is talking. Oh, for the river cruises. Yeah, that's interesting that actually works. I didn't think they could get that to work, but that's cool if they can, because it obviously has zero pollution, and it's literally zero cost too, because it's just water for the most part.
Yep.
Very, very good stuff. Thanks for adding that in.
Yeah, AI is playing a big role in these new ships too. But again, from anywhere from hotel services to scheduling shore excursions, all that stuff, dining room, the whole thing.
So let's wrap up this episode and this discussion with a couple. And again, we're going to have Pat on, hopefully, for a bunch of more in-depth technology discussions. Pat, I think you have alluded to the fact that maybe you can get somebody from one of the cruise lines to actually come on and talk to me. I tried to this summer, but they were very hesitant to talk to us live. But maybe you can talk somebody into at an executive level to get into talking to us here on Don Sullivan Show.
Yep.
But we'll see.
Yep.
But tell us this weirdness, not the Jones Act law and all of that. That's politics. But why is it that so many of these ships are American companies that build the ships, as you said, in France and Germany, and I think used to be in Scandinavia and so on, but yet they're flagged out of Malta or Panama or the Bahamas or somewhere else obscure? Why is that? Registered. When
basically,
registered. But go ahead.
They're foreign flag registered ships, and basically the laws of those
countries
places don't have as many restrictions and regulations as the U.S. does. We didn't talk about the crews on the ship. Where do they get the crews and what have you? They contract with people from other places.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go work on a cruise ship, you're signing a 3-month, 6-month contract. And then you go home for a couple of months and you sign on to another ship for another 6 months or what have you. So the labor laws, the requirements, restrictive requirements of different government organizations, what have you, are not as restrictive in these other places. So they make it. It's like Delaware. Everybody incorporates their companies in Delaware.
Yeah, except Musk now, because that judge screwed him. So,
except A lot of people are not doing that anymore. They're going to Texas.
Yeah.
But basically, it's the same reason.
Just to follow up on that,
they're called flags of convenience.
Yeah, and they obviously get paid, particularly Malta and so on. It's been convenient like that for hundreds of years for different reasons. The island of Malta, which was a British protectorate, now it's a actual sovereign country, but they make these things very, very convenient and very profitable to flag in. But again,
it's a beautiful place. The people are very nice there.
It's an amazing place. I got swine flu there, but that's another story. Just for the audience's sake, the Jones Act that I mentioned requires that all ships have at least on their particular itinerary have at least one international stop, and there's been waivers in Hawaii and specifically for COVID to allow for the Alaskan cruises to not, even though they're not taking advantage of this, to not have to stop in Vancouver or come back in Vancouver if they go up. But if they just were in the U.S. And they only stopped in the U.S., they would have to follow U.S. law. So that's
correct.
Yeah, that's the problem. So,
Well, that law that's put into place to protect the U.S. cruise industry.
well, I think to protect
Wi-
the employees
No,
as
no,
well,
no.
right?
What? No. Well, yeah, to one extent or another, but the rule is you cannot leave a U.S. port and come back to another U.S. port without touching a foreign port first.
Or you have to
So,
follow
in other
all
words,
U.S. applicable regulations,
right,
laws,
and
yeah,
well, that's part of it. That's part
including
of it.
labor law.
But
Yeah,
basic,
yeah.
but a U.S. flagship can make calls on Boston, New York, Washington, Delaware, all the way down the coast, and not have to hit a foreign port first. Uh, 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 but how much of an American cruise industry do we have?
Well, they're all still American-based companies.
It's
I mean,
virtually no. It's no. I'm talking about the company. I'm talking about the cruise line, how
yeah.
they fly. The law exists to protect the cruise industry, U.S. cruise industry, which doesn't exist
Well, right,
basically.
except that I mean, RCL, NCL, and CCL, the three major ones, are American listed, Nasdaq listed companies, and of course, most of the
Corp-
passengers are too. But you're right. It's
corporation, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's not the investors, that's not the shareholders, and of course, this is
No,
extremely profitable. However, just to put the audience at ease, I happen to know, and you can verify this, that the United States can have an aircraft carrier to any spot on Earth in 48 hours, and
yeah.
um, could interdict any problem that exists. And I assure the audience that if there was a real problem, that particular cruise ship that you happen to be on wouldn't be calling on the Navy of Malta to come help. It would be a call to, it would be called to Washington. So now, Pat, so end this up.
Well,
Yeah,
the cruise lines cruise lines would not go to a port that has uh, uh, political unrest or there's stuff going on where it could cause problems with the
yeah, but they could
passengers.
have a problem in the open
I
seas, and that's where the
Well, I've had passengers come back and complain that they didn't go to a particular port, and why didn't we go there? Well, they weren't going to issue hand grenades and M16s to go into
yeah,
the
I know
port, so they skipped that
Tunisia
port.
is always back and forth. They may go, they may not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Particularly,
So
oh well, that's getting into the geopolitics of it. But I do want to end this up
yeah,
with actually
okay,
inviting you to come back on to, and once we get
okay,
into more of the technology, once we get into more of the advancements that occur, particularly when the new ships come out, just dying for the Star of the Seas. I actually want to get on that just to see it more than anything else. See the incredible new stuff that they have on there. Stuff is a technical term, by the way. But let me ask you this: of all the
like
places,
the robot bartenders.
yes, I absolutely want to see that. That's true. They're really going to exist. They're going to be robot. I've seen them at tech shows, and they work, and they absolutely will be more efficient. They'll even be able to play to do the throwing of the or the dancing with throwing around the bottles and stuff. It's absolutely
Yeah,
incredible because I've seen this at tech
But
shows.
can they listen to your drunken sob
Yes,
stories?
they
That's a
can,
question.
Stephen. Yes, they can. Now, they can't necessarily go back to your cabin with you if you woo them, but that's coming too.
yeah.
That's a different story.
Uh,
All right, Pat.
ooh, that's
Last
that's a different
question before
episode.
I get in trouble here, which happens all the time. But of all the places you've gone, I've convinced Stephen here, Jersey Steve, to go to Alaska with us, and Erica has set this up. Captain Erica has set this up for us next year. Where would you go? Where should you advise somebody to go on their first cruise?
Uh, well, cost is cost a problem?
Let's just say a middle class family that is just retired. They're
Take,
65 years old
do
and they want to go on a cruise.
Yeah, do a Caribbean cruise. Just you do a run of the mill Caribbean cruise. Learn how the feel of the ship, how it works, what's going on. They'll give you the lay of the land. One of the reasons I got into the cruise, one of the things when I started specializing cruising, why I picked cruising, is because when we were a corporate travel agency, what little cruises we booked in that when I was running the corporate travel agency, what I was amazed at was the amount of repeat business. In other words, people coming back, and they would come back from year to year to year. Like you don't live in the Boston area, but there are people that go to the Cape every year, and they rent a particular cottage or home on the Cape a particular week. And they do this year after year after year after year. It's like automatic. Well, I had customers, I still have customers that sail on the Boston Bermuda sailings every year. They treat it like a trip to the Cape or up to Maine. They book the same week, the same type of cabin on the same ship going Boston to Bermuda on a 7-day cruise. And it's like their vacation. That's their 7-day vacation. It's like booking a place at the Cape or a different place. They use the cruise ship to do that. So one of the interesting things is when you get somebody to go on a cruise for the first time, it's the percentage of them repeating within 12 months of 24 months is very high.
Well,
in other words, that's why the cruise lines do a good job doing that. I mean, they bring back really.
Well, you do too,
and
I will tell you that Cruise Vacations has.
You're a prime example of it.
I am, but I was on cruises before I knew you, and in the last 20 years, you have been. And Cruise Vacations has set up everything for me and now Stephen.
And we met because of your friend referred you to me, Michael Corey,
who has been on the show talking about how to start a business. It's been Mike Corey is a friend of the Don Sullivan Show. So with that, I want to thank you.
He's also a good client. He's also a good client of Cruise Vacations.
Yes, he is. And Cruise Vacations hopefully will be sponsoring us soon. We'll talk about that later. But thank you, Pat, Admiral Pat, for joining us on this episode of the Don Sullivan Show, Big Ships version. We'll have you back on. Say goodbye to everybody, Admiral Pat. Say goodbye, Steve.
All right. Thank you very much.
Say goodbye, Steve.
It was a pleasure, Pat. Thanks, everyone.
All right. And I'll end it up like this. I'll end it up like I always do. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Download and collect them all. We have hundreds of episodes of the Don Sullivan Show now, or we will in the future. And remember, folks, whether I'm on top of a mountain, whether I'm on top of bigger mountains, which I will be in the relatively near future, whether I'm in the Grand Canyon, whether I'm on a cruise ship, whether I'm backpacking in Alaska, or sitting in my office in Colorado, just remember that all at-bats are situational.